Happy Tuesday.
Here we go. Back for another Tuesday, another recording. We have a guest this week. It's been a few weeks since we've had a guest, so I'm really excited to talk to our guest tonight. I've actually had a chance to talk to him on a different podcast, my home team Sacramento podcast. So I thought you would enjoy this conversation as well, Deb, and we thought we'd get him on Connectable. Today we have the owner of Lead Athletics, Blair Orr. What's going on, man?
Not a whole bunch. I've been in here from 6 to 9. There's nowhere else I'd rather be.
I think you said the same thing on home team too. It was late, and he's just sitting in there in the empty gym. It's gotta be a weird feeling having it be so quiet.
My phone has now rerouted. Siri thinks that I live here. So I just went with my wife to Tahoe this weekend, and I put directions back to home. It brought me right to the gym. So
that's how you know. That's how you know.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Is it normally empty for you right now, or did you just kind of shut it down early?
No, this is pretty normal for us. And we kind of take this approach of like, hey, we're working with high school athletes. They need sleep. We need sleep. But usually about, depending on the day, by 7:30, it's usually, lights out, weight rooms reset, ready for the next day type of thing.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, that's it's crazy, Deb. I know I think you probably just recently started following Lead, but it's crazy throughout the week seeing all the things you guys have going on, from the glow workouts to the early morning workouts and everything in between. Like it's a cool thing. And I think honestly, man, those are the things that kind of drew me to you in the first place, because we always because it's called Connectable. We like to start off the show by letting people know how we're connected with our guests. And I was trying to think, I know it was through social media as like how we actually got connected, but I'm trying to remember when I first saw your stuff. I want to say it was either Gabe Lemon, a friend of ours, or maybe Cody Allen. There might've been some connection there. Who's a previous guest on here. It was something like that, but we started seeing Lead, we started seeing your stuff. And eventually I'm like, well, I got to get him on my podcast. So we connected on home team. And you've been an awesome supporter of that, man, and we love everything that you're doing with Lead and all the athletes in that community. Excuse me.
Thank you.
It's pretty simple though. That's pretty much it, man. It was kind of through common connections and then also social media. So that's how we got connected in the first place.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you bring up the glow workouts, because what we have done in the last 12 months, really in the last 8, is we've said, okay, this is our niche. This is who we want to serve. And really finding out what that community was. Also kind of limited what myself and the rest of the staff and the whole community was able to do. In the sense that we have all these ideas to do, like family outings and all these community events, but you can't really do like a wine and weights or something of that line with high school athletes. And we had no problem doing it and trying to do it with adults when we trained adults, but now that we don't have that, finding new ways to just continue to kind of build that relationship, build that culture. And the coolest thing for us is, at least in the last probably 6 months that we've seen, is not just connections between coaches and athletes, but athletes and athletes, people who don't go to the same schools, or people who do go to the same schools now, creating what we hope for is lifelong friendships that otherwise wouldn't have come together if they weren't here.
I love that, and I'm trying my best to not go down the home team route because I have so many competition questions for you. I'm gonna ignore that side of my brain. But I love that, and multiple times you say connection, community, and that's kind of what we're all about, man. And like I said, from following you for however many years I've followed you and what you guys do, it's pretty obvious that you guys have a strong sense of community, and we're gonna dive into all that stuff. But before we do, man, just let the people know a little bit about who you are, what you do with Lead, kind of your background, and kind of catch us up with who Blair Orr is.
Yeah. So the boring stuff is from Southern California, a former college and professional athlete. And around the time that COVID happened is when I finished playing and made the transition into being a coach. And I had a phenomenal opportunity in some of the places that I was working and interning down in LA to work with professional athletes and just kind of see that side of things, see that sector. But it left a lot of questions of kind of why are we doing things, not to get into so much of the tactical aspect of coaching. But there was this big sense of like, why are we doing this style of training? What's the basis of this? Kind of how do we get from actual point A to point B? And so very shortly after, probably about 6 months later, I moved up here to Roseville. My wife is from here. Made the leap of faith. Very, very happy with how it's played out. And within a year, I kind of sat down when I first got to Roseville. I said, here's my 3 to 5 year plan. And within a year, God was like, no, we're going to do it now. And so when you look at how the doors just opened, it was just undeniably, hey, this is what we need to do. And we need to do it now. And this is the right timing. So opened lead. I opened it as a one-man band. The whole idea was I'm going to train athletes and we can rent out space to other coaches to come in and have their own businesses, because that's the business model that I had seen prior. And kind of the whole basis of what we're going to talk about today is I got about 6 to 8 months into that, and there was no community. Outside of me just coaching, there really wasn't this, there was no other, coaches working with me with the athletes. So we eventually brought on 2 coaches, and then just started building from there. And the community that's come out of that has now changed the demand of what we do on a regular basis, going from, okay, well, we're going to do what we did with professional athletes. We're just going to bring it to the athletes here, to changing into, wow, we have a lot of high school athletes really buying into the things that we're doing here. Maybe we should change the gears and do what's best for them. And so that's been the focus since the other 2 coaches came on. That was back in right before the summer of 2022. And now we're in 2024 and just started year 3. And we're just keep evolving. But what's been cool is to also see the community evolve as the more tactical side of training has evolved as well.
Awesome. And then could you tell us what teams you played for, and to go into a little, like, how did you, I'm always interested, like, how did you get, we don't have to like get deep into it, but if you don't want to, but like, how did you get started with sports, and like, did you play other sports, and like, where does this passion come from?
I was like a lot of athletes where you try a bunch of different sports. I tried swimming. I wasn't Michael Phelps. I tried soccer. I didn't have the agility. I tried baseball. I pitched 1 pitch. It ended up in the other team's dugout. I was done with baseball after that. And so basketball came around right before middle school. And so just kind of growing up in Ventura County, just getting different exposure, being so close to LA as it's a basketball hub, playing down there, and eventually went to high school in LA, played there, won a CIF championship, had a phenomenal team, just one of the best families I've ever been a part of. From there, went and played in Canada for a year, found out it was way too cold, came on back. I said I really wanted to go Division I. And the options were kind of Davis or Cal State Northridge. And the options were both walk-on options. And it's something that at the time, my ego is like, I don't want to be a walk-on, because there's this negative stigma around it. But it's probably the best decision I've made. And instead of going to a junior college and transferring again and all this movement, I decided to go to Northridge and walk on and be there for 4 years. And so it was on the basis that I wanted to be in a community, which is perfect for what we're going to talk about. But I wanted to be somewhere for more than 2 years, which I hadn't had since middle school. And I wanted to be, part of this community, have a fan base, call somewhere home. Had a great experience at Northridge, eventually earned a scholarship. And then after Northridge, went and played in China. Again, just a phenomenal opportunity to go see the world and get some different perspectives of how other people live. COVID happened. It was a very, very quick turnaround of, my wife is calling me saying, hey, you might want to get out of there. And I'm like, well, I don't understand the news, but it doesn't look too bad, so I think I'm going to stay. And the next day I walk outside and everything's shut down. I called her back. I go, I'm on a plane tomorrow. So that was the end of January in 2020. And so came on back and was in LA working and interning, just trying to gain experience. And the options were either I go to Phoenix and I open up a training facility out there, or I come to Roseville. I just figure it out. And got on the phone with my wife, and I said, "Hey, Phoenix, or how's this going to work out?" Because we were just dating at the time. There's a long pause on the phone. I said, "Yeah, let's see how Roseville works out. This is not too bad of a place." So came up here, ended up working at four different training facilities at the same time, on the basis that I didn't have any roots here. Nobody knew who I was. I needed experience. I needed to get a part of a culture. I didn't think at the time about building one, but just kind of getting involved with the community and seeing what the needs of the community was, what kind of sports were here, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm sorry, good, Deb.
Oh no, sorry. I know I'm just taking over here. Josh, you're fired. I'm just kidding. Even just
I've got to edit this thing. I'm not concerned anybody. Deb doesn't know how to edit this.
I will not. At one point I knew how, but I forgot how to do it. So just looking at your Instagram, just like it just seems like such a like desirable, like wanted place to be. Like I'm looking at it and I'm like, if I was back in high school playing like I want to be a part of this. I want to do this.
Yeah.
I want to be trained by the best. Like that. Look, it looks so badass and fun, and just like like you'd get some quality training.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, like, is it? Do you get a lot of high school athletes that come to you? Do you have to turn anyone away because you're full? Like, what's that like right now?
We have a membership limit, and that's one of the big things that I think when you look at other training, when you look at some of the facilities that I had been in LA, it's like, well, they're not going to have a limit. They're not going to say no to more income. But if we're going to be honest, we limit how many people are going to be in here each hour. And so when you look at the time span of a week, yeah, we have a limit on how many people we can have. I'm not going to sell over 100 memberships, because then I'm going to sell a membership that somebody then can't come into, because we have a limit on a daily basis. So in here, you'll see no more than 16 athletes at a time. And it's by design, because like we had today, we had 3 coaches roaming around, 1 coach leading, 2 others roaming around and form checking. But we just don't have this desire to kind of pack the place out. I got 2,500 square feet, 2,300 square feet of usable space. And so just kind of creating this almost what we've connected to or used as a metaphor of a classroom. In let's take an elementary school classroom. You probably want a school that has less students, right? That student to teacher ratio. We want the same thing.
I like that, like quality of one.
So we haven't turned people away, but what we do is we have what we call a success meeting. So the success meeting is completely free. They come in, it's about 45 minutes, and it gives us an opportunity to not only show them what we have, help explain our system, but it gives us kind of this test to see, okay, are they going to be the right fit for us? And are we going to be able to create the change that they want to have, right? So we do have an age limit. So if you're under 14, you can be 13 and test into the program. But if you're under 14, that's kind of our cutoff. Because although we think that we can do a pretty good job with someone who's 10 years old, it's not our forte, and we would rather focus on the athletes that we have within that age range.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You as a business owner and a trainer, and obviously the owner of the business, it's interesting because you're kind of connecting on 2 different levels, right? Like you've got to connect with the athletes to get them to buy into what you're teaching them, and for them to give their best effort. But then you need to connect with the parents, because they're the ones that are investing financially into their athletes, or their student athletes training. So how do you balance those 2 things? Is like, it's got to be tough, I imagine, because like I said, you're a trainer, but you're also an entrepreneur, a business owner. So it's like, you have to, in fact, I'll say this too, man. One of the things that you said on the last podcast I did with you was one of the things I still use to this day for when I'm talking to people about time management. Because I think I asked you, like, how do you balance your time? And you're like, I don't. He's like, I manage it, but I don't balance it. I'm like, I love that. I'm gonna steal it. And I've stolen it probably about 50 times.
I love it.
Perfect. I give you credit, but I just know I have stolen it. But But like, for you though, like you're doing that, you're managing both these things, like you're training and you have to think about the whole business side of things. So
Yeah.
like what are those connections like? Because obviously the connection is a little bit different between you and an athlete versus you and the parents, but how
Right.
important are both those connections?
I mean, it's vital, and the honesty right up front is vital, right? Not only, hey, we have this honesty of here's what the program is, here's what the price is, right, from a business standpoint, but setting expectations from the get go. Of I have turned down, I have lost count of the amount of athletes I have turned away because mom or dad come in, they say, hey, we have something Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Do you have time to train my son or daughter on Sunday? And I'm like, it's going to do them so much better if you take them to the movies on Sunday, or
Yeah.
let them have an extra nap, or take them to the park, or just anything else other than continuing to let's call it what it is because of physiology. We're going to break the body down,
Mhm.
right? We don't need more breakdown. And so we have turned athletes away because they have too much on their plate. So during that 45 minutes that you're going to sit down with me or one of my other coaches, we're going to find out what's on your plate, what are your motivations, right? What do we think that we can accomplish short term versus long term between now and 3 months and now and 12 months. And if we have really unrealistic expectations, there needs to be this honest feedback of, I love the fact that you want to lose 20 pounds because you have a football combine showcase coming up in 3 weeks. It's not realistic,
Yeah.
or just having a parent come in and saying, hey, I need guidance. There's times that we say, hey, yeah, they have the freedom in their schedule, but we don't think we're the best option for you. And giving them the guidance of, hey, you came in, we have some objective physical assessments that we do here. Hey, you didn't meet the requirement. And so I don't want to throw your son or daughter just in the deep end and just be surprised when they can't swim. I want to set them up for success from day one. And if we can't do that, I have different options for you, whether it is other friends of mine that are coaches, or we give you a remote program that we say, hey, it's for free. Come back in 6 months. Let's see where we're at. But I'm not going to set people up for failure off the get go. And so that honesty there is just vitally important for us. The other part of that is, I think when it comes to sales and like owning your own business, the amount of lessons that I've been learned, the biggest one ever is I'm not putting on a presentation when you come in. And I just did a seminar about this last month of business owners don't have the luxury of first impressions anymore. It's just not the world we live in. Your first impression is what is on that Google review, is what is on that Instagram page, is what is on Facebook, it is what your other friends told you. And so when they come in, if I have somebody walking through my doors, we have a pretty good sales rate just based on they already know why they're here. They're here for a reason. So I can turn around, I can just be really honest. I can say, hey, look, I'm not a business person. I'm not going to upsell you, right? You're not going to pay this base rate and then you're going to have additional fees on top. And then in 2 months, we're going to hit you with, hey, you're doing great, but we want to sell you on a bigger package. The prices are the prices, and I'm not going to sell you on what I don't think you need. It's the exact reason of back in the beginning of summer, we actually got rid of our 1 time a week training option because we were saying, I found the coaches and I just having conversations about, we don't believe that 1 time a week is going to be sufficient enough to see the changes that people are coming to us for. So why am I going to sell you on it? That's just saying, hey, I'll take your money, enjoy have a fun time during your workout, enjoy the ride. But on the back end, if we're looking at, hey, I'm going to ask you what your goals are, and I'm going to lie to you and say that 1 time a week is enough, I'm not going to sell you on that.
Yeah, well, that's what I've always appreciated about you, and not just you, but everybody that you're connected with in your space, right? And
Yeah.
I believe was it the Sacramento Athletic or
Coalition. Yeah.
Coalition? I don't know if you guys are still doing that, but that was huge for me because
Yeah.
I just did a podcast a couple weeks ago with again another common connection, Coach Chris Collins, and
Yeah.
I was at doing his podcast. We were there for like almost 3 hours. It was a good time, but we were there for a very long time.
Yeah.
But one of the things he brought up was how in Sacramento, in Northern California, the basketball community is kind of fractured, and there's some gatekeeping. It's pretty cutthroat, and there's an unwillingness to, I guess for lack of a better term, like give business to a different program.
Yeah.
because you're trying to kind of hoard all the talent to yourself.
Yeah.
But when I hear you guys talk, when I see you guys operate, when I see the people you're connected with, and you even
Yeah.
said, it's like, hey, if we can't give what this athlete needs or what this family needs, I'll send them
Yeah.
somewhere else. And also, I'm not going to just take their money just to get them in here if it's not going to benefit the athlete. I appreciate that, because there's a lot of people that would not do that. And it's
Yeah.
like, they see the dollar signs, like, however I can get them in here. I don't
Yeah.
care that I can't fit all these people. We'll sell as many subscriptions or as many memberships as possible,
Yeah.
and then figure out the rest later. And it's like, the fact that you guys are I guess, confident enough in the connections you have and the connections you have with the community. And you're
Yeah.
like, hey, we're about the community. We're about the athletes, whatever's best for them. If we can't do it, we'll send them to some good people that can do that.
Yeah.
So it's one of
Yeah.
the things I appreciate about what you guys do, man, because there's not, unfortunately, this, not everybody's willing to do that, unfortunately. And it's sad.
Yeah. I think there's a huge accountability factor too in what you're doing, in terms of like, hey, like you just said, like, we're not going to train you one day a week. This is what we're doing, and this is why. And it's a huge buy-in factor. And so it makes it a little more serious in terms of like, okay, I'm serious about my goals for them as it is for you. And especially when you look at the athlete as a whole, like your example earlier of, okay, like you said, the parents that I have things Monday through Saturday, can we squeeze in a Sunday? And you guys are like, and you're saying, maybe you should let your child rest. I'm a high school PE teacher.
Nice.
So I do,
Yeah.
I'm with the teenagers every day. So it's,
Yeah.
and I do see the athletes, and I used to coach too. And so I do see the athletes that are doing way too much. And it is good sometimes for just the parent and the athlete to realize, like, it's okay to like rest, because these nowadays, when I was in high school, it was a little different. I don't know if it was where I was living at the time or what, but today athletes are specializing, and they're specializing so early, and they're training so hard, and they're doing so many things. And at the same time, I wish that back then I would have taken like maybe my sport a little more serious. Like maybe I would have like, I'm like, oh, coulda, woulda, shoulda. But like, I was just, my generation, I think our generation back then was just kind of like, we'll train, we'll do whatever. It's a little more serious and hardcore these days, which is good. It makes them, more disciplined, and they take it more seriously. But then there's like a limit of like, how much is too much? Like, I've never seen athletes with like so many broken bones these days, like so many torn ligaments and surgeries by the time they're 15. It's nuts. So for you guys to just kind of like have a conversation with the families and the athletes, and just realize like, hey, for your physical and mental well-being, this is what our professional opinion is, take it or leave it. But you guys are implementing that in your business, and I think that that's great.
Well, I mean, and from a coach's perspective, how liberating and how freeing is it to just say no? In the perspective of an athlete comes in, hey, my knee's hurting, my elbow's hurting. I don't know. Hey, I have this issue with my ankle. Do you know something? No, I don't. But we have a wealth of different connections. We have business cards on the front desk of, if you want a chiropractor, we got a chiropractor. If you want a physical therapist, we have a physical therapist. If you want a licensed massage therapist who works with Olympians, we have that. And it's all very close. And so we have those connections of, if an athlete comes into me and they say, hey, I have this knee pain, theoretically I can say, okay, where does it hurt? We can do some table tests. But at the end of the day, if I know that I'm not the best person for that job, I'm doing a disservice. So it's almost like this freeing feeling of me saying, no, but we have somebody for you.
Yeah. And that's great too, because there's a lot of pressure too, probably in your world and in your business, for everyone wants to come to you for everything. Even me as a teacher, my kids look at me and they're like, my wrist hurts. And they just look at me and I'm like, okay, go to the doctor. Like, I can't fix this for you, and even the parents will ask me what's wrong. I'm like, I don't know. I don't have an MD, so it's just like, it's a lot of pressure, but it is freeing to say, I don't know, and just get that off your, your chest and your shoulders, because you can't just make something up, And so, so that's good.
Yeah. So kind of staying in the same lane of connecting with the athletes. So I always use this example. I've used it forever since I heard this on a podcast, but they were talking about years Tom Brady. And this is as he was entering his second or third to last season. And they're talking about how impressive it is for him to be able to still compete at a high level at the age that he was at, and considering the sport that he's playing. But one of the people on this podcast was saying, but one of the more impressive parts about that is not just the physical side of things, but it's the connection piece because he's getting older, but the guys that are being drafted every single year are 21, 22, 23-year-olds, and they're still getting younger. So
Yeah.
this gap between him and these new guys that he has to connect with it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's kind of the same for you, right? Like obviously you're getting older, but the athletes that you're seeing, you get like a new crop of young athletes all the time. So this gap is continuing to grow. Like how do you manage staying relevant? Obviously you have such a wealth of experience and knowledge about the game of basketball and athletics. So I'm sure that helps. And I gotta say this to everybody, if you're not familiar with Blair, you might be the biggest guest we've had on this podcast. So congratulations. I don't know if that means anything to you, but you're definitely the biggest.
I'm only getting bigger. I'm at 275. This is the heaviest I've ever been. It's all good weight, but
good for you.
yeah, I definitely couldn't do this. Couldn't play at this weight.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to interrupt myself because one of my things here, you were recently on the court with Mr. Steph Curry.
Yeah.
And you look pretty good out there. I saw the videos. It was pretty good.
I appreciate it. It was funny because I had a dunk in the runs and everybody was like, oh, hey, everyone got excited. And then somebody mentioned it afterwards. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. And then another person mentioned it. And by the 15th person who mentioned it, I go, oh, the expectations must have been really low. Otherwise, everybody would have blown over.
Yeah.
But what an experience. I had no idea he was coming until we got to the gym. I just got a phone call. Hey, be at Lifetime on this day at this time. I'm like, I don't know. Be there. Okay. I looked at my wife. I said, hey, I'm going to go play basketball. Like that. I don't know. And we get there, and the guy organizing it, Marcus, goes, Steph might show up, and then walks away. And I was like, oh, okay, good. All right. I probably would have prepared a little different. But
sure.
it was honestly, it wasn't any of this like starstruck thing or anything. It was just it was a treat for me because when you go to open runs, no matter how structured it is, it's nothing like what I had in college. And even overseas was very chaotic when you actually look at the game from a technical perspective. It's very chaotic. And so being able to play with Steph and being able to play with Kent Bazemore, who we now play with regularly, and phenomenal human, but being able to play a structured basketball game it was a treat for me. It was something I hadn't had since college. And so that was the fun part. But I didn't realize we only played for an hour. And so after that hour, we snuck him down the back stairwell and his bodyguard had already brought the car around. And I was like, okay, I think this is a little much. I know there's a few people, at the door. But when I walked back in, we're talking about there are people in Steph Curry jerseys. He had been there an hour. And I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, there's no way we were playing for 2 or 3 hours. The entire city of El Dorado Hills would have been there. So, yeah.
I know it was wild. And I was trying to think back. I don't even think I saw your video first. I think I saw it somewhere else. I'm like, that guy looks familiar. And then you posted like, oh, he was there. It was insane. Man, what a cool experience.
Absolutely.
But anyways, that was a sidetrack. So you're like, I don't know if I can play. He can play, everybody. He can still play. But again, I'm sure that probably helped as far as, my initial question, which was, how do you stay connected, relevant, and still authentic to who you are with these athletes that continue to get, in a sense, younger as they work with you? I'm sure, dropping the, hey, I played with Steph for an hour was probably helpful. But other than that, how do you do it, man?
I'll tell you in 10 years, maybe 15.
Sure.
I think that I'll say both sides of this. I think that still being young enough, still being like I'm 28. Yeah. And even though I started the business at 25, working with high school athletes this entire time, I think just having that community, it's also a very safe space. So it's not about me trying to fit the mold of any of these athletes' peers and try to be like one of them. It's about having a safe space where someone's comfortable enough coming to us and saying, hey, this is what happened at school, or I've got this going on. So as much as we want to build them up physically, I think that connection, there's nothing better than buy-in. We can get into coaching cues and the physiology and all the other stuff that we have in here when it comes to the sports science and all that to try and create buy-in. Nothing's going to do that more than being available and just being open and being non-judgmental. This isn't, it doesn't have to be the drama club where I'm feeding into whatever lunchtime drama they had, but it's a matter of the athletes are pretty in the routine if they come in about 10 minutes early and they'll sit on the turf because they know that we're going to go through our prep on the turf. And whatever I have going on behind my desk, I shut my laptop, let me go sit down, let me go talk, right? And so it's almost like being the parent of you pick your kid up and you go, hey, how was your day? And they go, good. No, I'm gonna pick into that a little bit. Okay, what was good about it? How was it good? Was it a good like a 6 out of 10 or was it 9 out of 10? Because that's pretty great. Tell me about it. I had an athlete say today it was a 4 out of 10. Okay, well, there's alarms there. It's like, okay, I want to be kind of careful. Maybe it was something, it ended up being midterms, but it could be something at home. And so just being a safe space, I think, was something that, and I've been told, and I believe it was something that just wasn't really available in the area outside of maybe a church group. And so I think that's been something that we haven't kind of touted, but I've had some pride in being that space.
No,
So
sorry.
the other thing, as soon as I say all that, we did a free clinic with touch shooting and Ryan Sipkins. Did that last week, and I told an athlete something, and he goes, "Well, the rules were different back then," and I was like, "Whoa." Back then, and I stopped. I had like my little group of like 10 athletes. I go, whoa, like back when I played? He goes, yeah. He goes, I go, like, how old do you think I am? He goes, oh, like in your 40s, like just flying confidence. And the kid next to him smacks him on the arm and goes, nah, man, he's like 34. And I was like, oh. All right, cool. Good. And a lot of parents come in and they assume the same. A lot of athletes assume the same, and I think it's based on just kind of owning your own business. I think
Sure.
Not a lot of people are 25 starting their own brick and mortar. A lot of people start their own business. But the joke I always make to always lighten the mood, especially when it's somebody's first day, so they kind of get a sense of our humor.
Yeah.
Is I go, yeah, it's the hairline, huh? And they go, no. They start backtracking. They go, no, that's not what I meant. I go, oh, okay, huh. Sure.
That's awesome.
You're so tall. Look up to you. They think you're dumb. Was wise,
But they also know you control their fate in a few minutes too.
Yeah.
Man, Deb, I don't know about you, but that hurts because I'm 36. So is Deb. So and we have a very, very low level podcast. Look, he owns his own business.
I know. Well, yeah, all of that. They just kind of, look up to you. And so there you go. Working around teenagers every day, I will tell you, they guess my age ranging from 19 to 45. So I don't know what to think of that. I don't know. I'm like, do you know how college works? What mean? And so it's just, I don't know if they were being dumb. Anyway, so don't take it seriously, whatever they say.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's great that you have such the ratio, like from coaches to athletes, like you're able to sit on the floor with them and talk with them. I'm sure they're not used to that just because, when you're on a team, like, I don't know how often that happens. I don't know. I guess I can't speak for, any team or anybody, but there's so many of them, and there's like, once you get to practice and get to your game, there's a job to do and And so just, I'm sure it's not often where they just kind of slow down and just kind of like you said, like how a parent asks about their day, and who knows how often that happens, in their own home. So you don't know. So I'm sure they appreciate it, even if they don't say it. Like it's a very important part. It sounds like. Yeah.
And one of the things I had for you too, man, and I know you and I had talked a little bit about like some of the leadership stuff you've been doing, some of the development and motivating your staff. But I always feel like someone in your position, it's very different. It's the people that you have working for you. They're not clocking into a nine to 5 where you just come in, stamp a couple of papers, file some paperwork, and then you're done. Like you are literally changing lives, right? Physically, you're improving their health, their physical ability, their strength. But then, as you just said, like mentally, you're there for them as well to be kind of a support or a second set of parents in some ways, right? Or big brothers or uncles, however you want to word it. And so you have to find special people to be a part of your team. Like you can't just pick anybody. Like you can't just pick someone because they have an incredible athletic track record, right? You could, but like there's so much more to what you guys do. and
Yeah.
it's that connection piece. And it's, again, I keep saying it, but it's like it's life-changing stuff. And you and I have talked about it before, like the stuff that you guys are teaching them one day when they're out of sports, they have their careers, their families. Like these are things that they're gonna take with them: the mindset, the work ethic, the determination, all these different things. But as you're, I mean, I know you say you have a fairly small team right now, but like as you put your team together, I guess how important is that to understand, like for them to understand what they're joining when they become a part of your team and start working for you?
I think it's a really big piece. I think that, and in my current role, it's really unique. I don't coach anymore. I coach 2 sessions a week. I think technically 3. But once we get to about 2 weeks from now, I won't coach at all. And so I might still be integrated into each session, but I might not be leading it. And so the handoff of responsibility has been something that has definitely taken time. I think when you look at, we have a team, technically right now we have a team of 5 with 1 remote. We have a big responsibility to the athletes to create this well-rounded person. And when you look at, I don't want to be a hypocrite within that and say, hey, we are going to be this type of person, and then you bring in another coach and they just don't fit the mold. We had a coach interview for us 2 weeks ago, and I had to turn him down. Number one, he was overqualified. Number two, I think he would have been a good fit. I think he would have been a really good fit for what we're doing. But I have to be really careful of bringing people into the coaching family. And so I think it goes deeper than the saying, be slow to hire, quick to fire, because that can be really disruptive. Even if I bring somebody in, I onboard them for 2 months, getting rid of that coach has now made connections with athletes that, could be immeasurable. And so you have to be careful with that. And I think that it does take a special individual. I think the roadmap that we've given them has been the other thing is just being very open with the new coach, and saying, hey, here's the expectations, right? I don't expect you to know everything. This is what was told to me in my first internship. So I was one of 2 interns at the time. They got rid of the other guy at a time where I had just finished my bachelor's. This guy had a master's. He had a CSCS. He had, I had 1 certification at the time. And it was just from a knowledge perspective, it was night and day. But I had the energy. I had no problem getting in somebody's face and cheering them on and yelling and all that. And so that's something that I look for more so, because I have no problem taking the time and teaching you everything that I know. But the expectation has to be there early on of, hey, if we're going to bring you into this family, I need you to do A, B, and C. I need you to have energy. I need you to have integrity. I need you to be on time. I can teach you the rest. But having that connection, I could talk about this forever, because this is literally what my job is now, is to build up other coaches and have systems. It's another saying that, like, it's not about the systems, it's the people, right? The people make the business, not the systems. But it sure does help to have systems and have some guidance, because I've had some great coaches. We have two coaches that didn't work out for us that are now in PT school. And I think that they would have made phenomenal coaches long term. But at the time, I was like, man, these people just, like, I just don't think that this is for them. Removing myself from that situation, now looking back, I can take full responsibility for it. I didn't tell them what the expectation was on day one. I did not give them a career roadmap, so they had no idea how long this thing was going to last. And I didn't really set them up for success within, this is our standard, this is how we do things, and I promise you, we will build you up along the way, but this is what's important now, and what's important later will help you build up, right, to whatever for them individually is next. If we're going to be completely honest, even though I have my 5 people, this is always going to be a changing family. It's not a fun thought to think about, because like, I have quite literal brothers in here, but it's going to be a changing family, because if you look at this industry, it is not something that somebody gets in at 18, retires at 65, and that's it. It's just not. And so if I can set somebody up for success so that when God opens the door, like he did for me here, that they can take that right away, awesome, I've done my job. And I think that's something that I've said for a while, but didn't really have the opportunity to until we lost Sean. Sean, so I don't know how much you know about our staff. Our sports scientist, his name was Sean McDuffie, and he ended up working for the Kings for a week during summer league. And the conversation turned into, okay, well, how's the hiring process going? They go, well, if you want a full-time, position with us, you'd have to have your master's. And as fate would have it, as God would have it, a month later, he gets this opportunity. He gets master's paid for, his food, his housing, everything at a Division I in Georgia. And I remember walking in the door, and we'd had this conversation probably 5 nights in a row of us getting on the phone. He goes, "What do I do, Blair? What do I do? Okay, they just told me this changes. They haven't offered me the job, but if they do, what do I do?" And I said, "Hey, let's take it one step at a time." I remember walking in, and he just looks at me like a deer in headlights. He goes, "They offered me the job." And I yelled out. I was so excited. I was like, "Let's go." And then I stopped. And I was like, "Oh man, I'm sorry. Like, I should probably be upset. Like, I should probably be more sad." So I apologized to him for not being more sad that he was leaving us. But I'd be a hypocrite if I were to say, "Hey, I want to help build somebody up, either directly or indirectly, so that when the opportunity comes, they can take it." And then something like this happens. I say, "You're too valuable to us. We need to retain you. You need to stay here." And so that was the first big opportunity that we've had somebody kind of go and like graduate as a coach, and he's absolutely crushing it. He's at Mercer in Georgia, and they play Alabama coming up in football. He has women's basketball, is loving that, and a few other sports. So he's just crushing his role right now.
That's awesome, man. Well, I think I'm assuming that's kind of what you were referring to earlier when we were chatting about like the motivational piece. Like it's interesting. You're there. You would think, okay, Blair's job is to motivate the athletes, right? Those are your clients, right? And you're trying to train them, you're motivating them. But it sounds like you have a passion for not just motivating them, but also your staff. And as a leader, like you said, that's the best thing ever is when you have, like you said, on the outside as a business owner, it's like, this is kind of a bummer, but as a leader, of people, seeing them succeed, it's like, oh, that means I've done what I was supposed to do. Like you said, you were a launching pad, and you were kind of there to propel them forward and maybe push them to a point where they didn't realize they could get to, if they weren't, in your system, in your presence. So is that kind of what you were referring to as far as like being passionate about the motivational side of things?
Maybe.
I was a little bit off there. I took a swing. I wasn't sure.
No. I think maybe, because when you look at passion, it's kind of like this loaded character traits, this loaded quality that can mean a lot of things. And I'll go back to the example of the 2 coaches that we used to have that are now in PT school. And at the time, what I told them, and I still believe this, is that the things that they were displaying to me didn't show me that they were willing to self-sacrifice enough to the point where it was convincing to me that this is what was for them. And so I sat both of them down. I said, go find whatever you're willing to self-sacrifice. Right? If you look at the things I've had to sacrifice, and I think this holds true for athletes too, is there's a lot of conversation about, hey, you're going to go play multiple games, multiple weekends. You're not going to have this freedom of schedule. You're an athlete. This is the exchange that you have to give up your freedom of schedule and your social life. And these are the sacrifices that you have to make. I don't think that's something to be downplayed, but that's why I told them at the time is, hey, I don't think this is for you, because you're not willing to self-sacrifice right now for this industry and to be really successful in this. Now, like I said, being removed from that situation, I think I can take a lot of ownership and a lot of responsibility for. I could have set some people up for success better. I know now, and so now that is the new standard. You learn from every experience. But I think that you can be really passionate about something. And Sean, the coach that's now at Mercer, he was great at this. He was great at having side, not passion projects, but just side hobbies. And you look at someone like myself or Brett, and it's like, we're going to be in here 6 to 9 because this is what we love to do. This is our hobby.
Yeah.
We would rather not be anywhere else. I think Sean kind of opened my eyes to he either was coaching or he was boxing. Or
Nice.
a different year he was coaching or he was doing golf. Or he was coaching, he was doing chess. Like there was always something else there. Yeah,
Chess.
right. Talk about Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
But I think that there's passion, but that I just don't think is always can be the only driver. Because at some point, priorities are going to change, life is going to change. That's going to run out at some point. So I very seldom see that as the main driver of somebody being successful, especially in this field.
Sure.
Yeah. What is your favorite part about this whole thing? Being a business owner,
Oh man,
athletes.
Yeah. The challenge, right? So I've said this. I'm sure I said it on the last time Josh and I talked. Was I'm a small business owner. This is what I signed up for, and I get it. Every small business, they have their challenge. But I have no sympathy for any small business owner that complains about the day-to-day of what they're dealing with. Because this is the challenge that I signed up for. Before I was working here, or before I opened the gym, I was working at other facilities. And mentally, I was like, yeah, I think I can do this a little better. I think that's how a lot of, especially like if you read the E-Myth, I think that's how a lot of businesses get started, is by a technician, somebody who's the actual technical person who gives the deliverables or creates the deliverables. A lot of times that person will say, well, I can go handle a business. I can go do this on my own because I can do my job better if I have my own set of rules. And that's not always the case, because very quickly that technician finds out, holy smokes, there's a lot to manage. But I think that I'm getting a little bit off track. Remind me of the original question, because I'll go off.
No, yeah. I was gonna say, what's your favorite part of all of this? Like athletes, being a business owner.
The challenge, because this is what I signed up for, and so I don't have a business degree. And I've said this jokingly, but I think the more I say it, the more truth there is to it. Is thank goodness I didn't get a business degree. I got a kinesiology degree, right? So I like to think that I know my stuff in here, and I can deliver a great product, but I have no idea what I'm doing from the business end. And I think the fact that we're still here in year 3, and we have, from a business standpoint, been more profitable year after year. I think the challenge has forced me to learn what I need to know at the right times. Perfect example, I have a financial advisor, and Steve is his name, came in one night. This was now 2 summers ago, about a year and a half ago. And Steve walks in and he sits down in the gym at 9 o'clock at night with my wife and I. And he goes, Blair, what are your KPIs? And KPIs, key performance indicators. And I go, well, we test a hands-on hips counter movement jump, we test a broad jump or a drop jump, and we do a 10-yard fly with a 1-yard build, a 10-yard fly with a 5-yard build. And so
sounds right
going through, and he's so confused. He's like, what are you talking about? And he goes, no, your business KPIs. And I was like, I didn't know those existed. And so when you look at, like, I couldn't tell you how much money we had coming in. I just knew that the money coming in was going right to rent and paying everybody and all these different things. So, that was a learning process. Then we had to get into marketing. That was a learning process, because we jumped into putting this message out here before even realizing who our market was, and our market is athletes. But if we're just broadcasting it to everybody, now it gets kind of confusing about what we're really here for. So that was another thing. Now it gets into management of other coaches and being the best leader I can be, no pun intended, but the best manager of stress for my staff, the best manager of communication, the best manager saying, hey, here's how we want to steer this ship. Taking in information and being the ultimate decision maker is something from a coaching standpoint I didn't want to make. I didn't want to be that person in charge, because if you look at when I was in LA or all the places I've worked here, I've never been the head person in charge. So I was always in a position where I could go to somebody else and say, here's what I'm thinking, what do you think? And bounce ideas off of each other. And so if you fast forward to at least 18 months of being here, whereas 10 months of that, I did have other coaches, it took me about a year and a half to get comfortable with going, yeah, I'm the person in charge, but there's other people here who their input's valuable, so it should not be this, hey, I think this is best, because now I have a coach in their early 20s who has a completely different viewpoint of the fitness industry. That is of value. And so kind of just going back and forth, and obviously having to say, okay, at the end of the day, this is the direction we're going, but um, taking in information and viewpoints and all of that from my staff has been the only way that we've been able to kind of steer the ship successfully.
Yeah. I think that's super important for anyone that's listening right now, if they've ever thought about starting something, whatever their business may be. Just to know that, like, hey, like, I don't have they're like, oh my God, I don't have a business degree either. Maybe I can really do this, because I think some people think that they're limited
Yeah.
because they're not an expert in certain like a part of what they're doing, right? Like you said, like, you're like, I have the kinesiology standpoint down, like, obviously, but like the business, that's a whole like separate, entity.
Yeah.
So I think it's helpful to know that, like, it's still possible to like
Yeah.
do something and to run your own business. And you don't have to have a degree in certain things. You can kind of just learn as you go. Um, I think people limit themselves sometimes. So I think that's great that
Yeah.
you're just like, we'll just figure it out. And look, you're figuring it out.
I'll say the figuring out thing came from just blind ignorance. And if I didn't have it, I was scared myself out of doing this thing in the first place. Because when you look at raising capital, and raising capital isn't like oh, yay, we have money now. That is an obligation. I got to pay this back, I mean, if we want to be really transparent, this whole renovation was $120,000. Right? That didn't just come because it was sitting in the bank. There's a financial obligation that I got to pay an institution back for this, even if the numbers worked out for us. And so I think that those big decisions, if I had an experience before, I think in the phase of life that I was at 28 versus now, I know it's a 3-year difference, but I think of where I was then, I would have scared myself out of making a lot of decisions.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I love
Yeah.
that. One of the things I was, I was going to mention to you is the creativity of your guys' social media. And I've always thought it was super dope the way you guys do things. It makes me question why I'm doing social media. Sometimes I'm like, these guys are like light years ahead of what I'm trying to do. I barely know what I'm doing. But even to the boxes that you guys have been doing recently. I mean, just the whole thing. So it's like, it's got to be fun. Obviously there's the training, the business side, but I feel like this feels like a place where you can kind of flex your creativity too. Like, do you feel like that's a place where you get to just kind of mess around and try these different things, to whether it's a marketing thing, a social media thing? Like, do you feel like you get to kind of use some creativity in this business of yours?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think like I've taken inspiration from so many other places. The boxes weren't my original idea, but I saw a gym in Milwaukee doing them. They've been doing it for a few years for their personal training clients. I was like, how can we take our twist on this? Creativity from having a clothing line, right? And creativity from having some of these events. That came from a gym in LA, called Allegiant, who I have taken a lot from. And the people running that are doing a phenomenal job. So, finding creativity, I think, has also been a big thing of finding other people who are creative and then saying, okay, how can we put our spin on it? Has been a really big thing.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's a fun follow for sure. So if you guys aren't following, pause the podcast, go follow, and then come back and finish this thing out. We have you for a few more minutes here, man, but just kind of taking a random side path here. One of our popular episodes that we've done about 6 times now are pet peeves, and we'll just run through a bunch of pet peeves. So it doesn't have to be a training, athletic pet peeve, but just in life in general. What's a big pet peeve for you?
Oh man. I don't know if I have anything in life. I'm sure my wife can give you a list of 20 that I do. Um,
I'm in the same
but
boat.
I think that it's something that I wouldn't say is a pet peeve, but there is a certain way that things should be done. Well, especially when it comes to a gym, and I learned this from a gym out in Miami. Like I said, there's inspiration everywhere. But I learned this from a gym out in Miami where they worked with pro athletes, and I looked at some of the gyms that I had been in that train pro athletes as well. And if you take this turf, this is 20 yards of turf.
Mhm.
They would have equipment all over that place. It would look like a 3-year-old's playroom, right? Where there's just equipment all over the place.
Yeah.
And so the gym owner in Miami, his point was, hey, we're working with professional athletes. This person has a personal chef to look over everything they eat. They have a trainer to look over everything that they do with their body. They have a coach. They have all this huge network of other people who are there to pay attention to detail down to the most minute detail about everything about their life. And so when you come in here, this should speak the same message for what we're trying to do. So if we have a standard, there shouldn't be just equipment anywhere, right? We walk in. This is the end of the day. It's 9 something. It's 9:01. It's the end of the day. The weight room is either set up for the next day or it's reset at the end of the week. Everything has a place. There isn't going to be a weight plate on the ground or a dumbbell just sitting on a bench. Every bench goes in the exact same place. And I think that when you look at that attention to detail, a lot of people might say, I don't think that this is important, and they're entitled to their opinions. But the way I see it is if we take one day where I leave at the end of the day and I go, I'll take care of it tomorrow. By next week, that's going to be 2 days. By the week after, it's the whole week where I don't put anything back. And so now I have a professional athlete walking in the door like we did this time last year. And instead of going, wow, okay, there's a lot of attention to detail, right? They take their stuff seriously. They're, the image, for lack of a better term, is important. If stuff's just all over the place, it's like, I don't know if this is the place for me. And if we're going to think that mindset of with the perspective of a professional athlete, why is it any different for a high school or a college athlete, right? We want to do things to an incredibly high standard, whether it's the welcome boxes or the leader boxes, or it's stuff like this. And I did a seminar on this a few months ago. If I want to say that I'm the best at something, I have to be able to have the track record to back it up. Otherwise, I'm just saying it, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I was at the seminar, I asked everybody there, I said, hey, I want to have an open discussion. What makes you, or what verifies, or what actually, what entitles you to the opinion that you think that you are the best? If you're going to say that you're the best, what have you done? And so I just think having this big accountability of, hey, we're going to say that we're going to do things to a really high standard. We need to do them all the time. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I think even just for your athletes too, to see that and have that example is important because like you said, some people would say, well, what's the big deal if there's a weight plate on the ground? But yeah, it kind of compounds on top of each other because then pretty soon without thinking about it, your athletes see that it's like, well, it doesn't matter if I re-rack the weights or not. And then pretty soon, so it's like, it's not just, it's out of its place. It's like, there's a bigger thing. I've always said, I know some people talk about the shopping carts at stores. My thing about that, especially at Costco is the worst when it comes to this. Like, it's not just the fact that the person's too lazy to put the cart back where it's supposed to go, but then you have a bunch of other morons that do the exact same thing and they follow suit. And now you have all these carts because they weren't thinking or they were following someone's bad lead. So it's like, I'm with you. More on there than strong. But you guys know who you are. I think
the Costco example is amazing. I've made posts about this. Of like, you're telling me you just walked 2.1 miles in Costco and you got to your car and you're like, I can't take another step. I'll get out of here. But no, to your point, and I hadn't even thought about that until now. The athletes see it. And we just had that an hour and a half ago, 30 minutes before the podcast started. We had our hurdles out for actual training. And we had an athlete come by as I'm starting to put them one by one. We got 6 of them, put them back where they're at. He just grabs it and starts helping out.
Yeah.
But if we just have our hurdles just in a corner, just kind of thrown there with no organization, they're probably not going to have them help. But now they see that there is value here, and I think that's a phenomenal point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. So I love it. I love that's a pet peeve for sure. I think it's a pet peeve. Attention to detail. Don't be
Yeah,
lazy. You sum up
yeah,
that like that.
Yeah.
yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
You know, I was gonna. I hate to do this, but
yeah.
we
Go for it.
didn't talk about this before, Deb. So Deb used to have a question when we were doing Character Combine. Deb had a question she kind of became infamous for. Not everybody appreciated this question, but everybody enjoyed having to deal with this. So I think you'd be a great person to ask. So I'm gonna let Deb ask this question. But I just wanted to tee you up,
Let's
Deb.
hear it.
All right. So I like to ask someone, like, if you could think of a song, just one song
Yeah,
that would be, I call it a life song. Like right now in your moment, in your life, at this moment,
yeah,
because it can change. If you could think of a
yeah.
song that, what would your life song be that would like kind of describe what you're feeling, going through, and all that stuff right now?
Yeah, I think this is heavily influenced by the fact that, and this isn't a plug by any means, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have a free group if anybody wants to join. It's not for athletes, it's for former athletes, but it's a lot of 50 Cent playing. And I think just kind of, we've recreated the collegiate feel with all of these former athletes coming in and doing college style workouts. It is an accountability group for me, if we're being completely honest, because it gets me out of bed 3 times a week and makes sure that I'm here. But it'd be Hustler's Ambition by 50 Cent.
Very nice.
And I think if we go back to passion, if I'm being completely honest, my passion for being the best has run out. And that's a big thing that I have had to settle with recently in the last probably 3 months or so. I don't have a passion to be the best. When you look at what we do here, everything's objective. An athlete comes in, they say, I want to get faster. We're going to measure that. I want to make sure that after 1 month, I can prove to you that you've gotten faster instead of just saying it. And why don't I have the same approach to being the best? Because if I have 10 athletes that say, oh man, lead is the best, and I'll use Gabe Lemon as an example because we talked about him, and I love Gabe. But if Gabe has 10 athletes that say, oh man, G6 is the best, who's to say who's right and who's wrong? So when we start to get in this comparison of this like divisive competition of who is the best in a certain area, in a certain sector, in a certain region, it's a zero-sum game. I'm wasting my energy. I'm wasting my time. And you start trying to objectify how you're the best. And if you don't actually, no matter how many objective reasons you can come up with being the best, it doesn't matter because it's a subjective game anyways. And so if I say, hey, we're going to go by profits, I'm not the best. A lifetime is probably the best, right? If we're going to go by professional athletes, it's probably not going to be us. It's probably going to be one of the meccas like Exos in LA. And so like there's all these different ways. So, just being really open with myself, being the best doesn't matter anymore. What matters now, and I've said this, it's one of those things of what you continuously say and kind of the habits and the actions that you take is what matters, is I want to operate at a really high level. And I had to take a step back. So I did this at the beginning of the year. And I think this is really important for coaches to hear, is at the beginning of the year, I said, okay, I'm going to have 3 athletes, and I'm only going to take 3 athletes. And I already know that the 3 athletes that are going to be with me are either going to be with me 3 or 4 times a week. And they're going to be with me for one-on-ones, right? That's a good financial investment right there. And so what I did is I sat down and I said, if I deliver them the best training experience, it has to have these things. And I had subjective pre-workout assessments of how I felt, how I slept. I had post-workout assessments. We had nutrition. We dialed in their nutrition. We had supplements. Everything was dialed in. We tracked every single movement. And I said, these are the things that are going to make me the best possible trainer. And about 6 weeks later, I found myself not doing most of the things on the list. Not because I didn't think that they're important anymore. It's because as a business owner, I had too much on my plate. And I didn't know how to manage it well. And that was the moment that I said, I need to stop coaching, or at least I need to make a decision on what is going to help me operate at a very high level, right? If I look at the finances of the business, I knew my KPIs a little better, but I wasn't tracking it like a business person needs to. I have a financial obligation. I have people on payroll. And all of a sudden, if we get into our dry season and I don't have enough for payroll, there's nobody else to blame except for myself. It's not on the athletes who maybe just cancel their memberships, the parents who cancel their memberships because, school starts or whatever. It's on me because I didn't plan. I didn't know. And so all of a sudden, if I have to turn around and say, hey, I can't put food on your plate, that's my fault. And so from a responsibility standpoint, I'm saying that I want to operate at a high level, at the highest level I personally can. I need to focus on less things. I need to let my coaches be great coaches and set them up for success. But that is kind of the season, if you will, that I'm in. And so I think that the passion, going back to the original thing of like, what is the song? Hustler's Ambition. I think that kind of just where we're at is it's this refocusing. It's a new fire, right? Instead of before it was the passion of working with athletes in a loud environment and, just being around really driven individuals who want to get better, who are coming to you to get better. I think that subjective, I am the best at this thing, it's a zero-sum game. So that took the fire out of that,
Man, he says he doesn't want to be the best, but that might have been the best answer to your life song question of all time. Every time you've asked that. That was awesome. I knew he'd be good for this question. Man. So, sorry, Deb, what were you saying?
No, I was like, that was great. It was almost like he knew the question was coming. We gave a lot of
I know.
I probably would have picked up more, a cleaner song. So we have, it's not allowed to play in the gym because we have a explicit, filter on all of our music.
Gotcha.
My wife made sure no bad words are being said in the gym. But that would probably, it's definitely played on the way here.
There you go.
So.
I love it. That's a great choice for a great reason, man. Yeah. Well, hey, it's we've been recording for a while. I could, as you know, we've talked a lot in the past. I could talk to you forever, man, because I have so many other questions, but I want to be respectful of your time. So before we get out of here, anything else you want people to know? Anything you have coming up? I know you guys, like we talked about, you guys do some events and things like this. This will come out, just so you know, for reference. This will come out next Tuesday, which would be October 15th. So this will air the morning of October 15th. So just so you're aware before you drop any events that are going to be passed.
Yeah. We're doing another, what we've called Club Lead. We started playing house music one day, and we had all of our female athletes thought that they were in Zara. All of our, a bunch of other athletes were like, man, it's like Club Lead. And I was like, oh, you got something there. So Club Lead is an 8 p.m. workout where I think that there are probably a lot worse places for high school students to be at 8 p.m. on a Saturday. So kind of that whole, safe space to be. Sure. It is a loud music, LED lights, just fun environment. It's going to be 8 p.m. this coming Saturday. So the Saturday after this podcast is released. And we do that every other month. The other thing that we do that is going to be coming up closer to Thanksgiving is what we call Sunday Sundays. Again, I can't take a bunch of high school athletes to a brewery, so we take them to Handel's Ice Cream. And if they show up in some lead gear, they get some free ice cream. And so we have an ice cream social. So that's what's coming up. Other than that, just continuing to try to get more and more integrated with more programs and hopefully expanding our reach beyond the 2,500 square feet we have behind me.
I love it. Where can they follow you on social media, websites, YouTube, all those different things? He doesn't have a podcast yet, but I'm sure at some point one's on the way.
I think I have some episodes recorded, but they, I got to get the branding down first. All of our socials are at Lead Performance. Our website is trainatlead.com. And that's going to be the best way to get in touch with myself or one of the coaches.
Yeah. And make sure you guys, reach out. If you're in the Sacramento area, you have young athletes over 14. Check it out for sure. It would be worth the investment. And at the very least, make sure you guys give them a follow, because the stuff that they put out there is really is incredible. I'm not just saying that because Blair's here and he's a giant. I'm not just saying that. I'm not scared of him. I really believe in it. So definitely check out their stuff. Like I said, I do love it. And I feel like I try to share or point people your direction as much as I can, especially for home team, because like I said, man, I believe in what you guys are doing, and it's needed and necessary for this area. So make sure you guys go follow everywhere you can and check them out. Blair, man, this has been fun. I appreciate the time as always. Thanks for dropping some knowledge on us. And man, good luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you. Absolutely. I appreciate it, guys. This has been phenomenal.
All right, man. Take care. Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.